Dutch stadholders, Frederik and his wife Amalia van Somm, started the fashion for the porcelain cabinet, and then they had 5 children who continued the Dutch tradition into Germany as they married the Dutch princes, and I've indicated the Orange family in color to distinguish them from the Germans. And you can see that they all had porcelain cabinets in the various residences that they erected. They had porcelain rooms, elaborate porcelain rooms in Oranienburg. It's quite handily named, so you can recognize the family of Orange. And in these palaces were pieces of Kakiemon. We know that from the inventories of the places, and I've illustrated the types that we can recognize from the inventories in Germany, but also, of course, through William and Mary in England, Kensington Palace, Hampton Court. What I would like to do today is to, I'm trying to find out how did these people get their hands on porcelain? How do you go about it? And my main subject of my new study is to find it out for the 17th century, but for today I thought it would be nice to concentrate on the 18th century, similar period to the Dresden collection. And I would like to take as an example the predecessor of the Dutch royal family today is the Frisian branch of the Oranges, especially Johann Willem Frieso and his wife Maria Louise. Marie Louise came from the family of Hessen-Kassel, as you can see. And they had their nice court, the court at Leeuwarden, where now conveniently the Prinsessenhof Museum is located, so please go and see it. They inherited various stashes of porcelain, various sources of porcelain. I would like to go through them. To start off with, William and Mary, they die. Mary dies in 1694, William in 1702, and there is the inheritance of all their estates that is a big issue. And Johann Willem Frieso fights for the inheritance, but on his way to settle the inheritance, he dies in 1711. And in the same year, it must have been very sad for Maria Louise. Her mother dies as well. So let's have a look at the various sources of porcelain and the inventories. And we will start off with William and Mary, because in one of the estates that Johann Willem Frieso inherits is the porcelain that comes from England. So we can see that in the inventory, it states various shapes that we can now recognize as being Kakiemon, 2 dishes with brown edges and a red and gold flowers, an 8-sided slop bowl with red flowers, and a porcelain inkstand and sander with flowers of various colors. That must have been the pieces that you can see, or similar pieces. Another source is the inventory of Maria Louise's possessions that are taken after the death of her husband in 1711, and it states in the inventory that this is from several sources: her mother's inheritance from Maria Louise van Hessen-Kassel, and the items presented to her by Johann Willem Frieso, her husband, and the acquisitions that they made together. So several sources that are combined in the inventories. And here too we can find Kakiemon shapes, such as these 6 8-sided Japanese bowls, and there's a whole category of red and white ware with 8-sided slop bowl and 8 10-sided dishes. So how did they get their hands on these pieces? And I was very optimistically trying to find out, and I haven't done very well. I've found out lots of things, and I'm going to share them with you, but no direct sources for any of the Kakiemon pieces. There we are. Nevertheless, there are various interesting things. For instance, there is an informal network going on. Willem Soutijn, he's a Dutch East India Company director, and he writes a letter to Maria Louise offering his services. She wants to buy a cabinet with a mother of pearl inlay, very interesting, but there we are. And he writes in this letter to her directly, with regard to the brown cups and saucers with white, thus your highness will be pleased to be informed that the company has decided to not sell those, but to keep them for use at their quarters and yachts. However, I have found opportunity to acquire 36 pieces of the same sort, which I take the liberty to offer to my lady, as a kind and small unworthy present. So here we see an informal network. William Soutijn, a high-positioned VOC official, he can get his hands on something exclusive. And it's very interesting for the scholars of books, because this is probably Chinese porcelain, with brown and white decorations. And it's very interesting to see that the Dutch East India Company has decided to keep it for own use, as a kind of presentation ware, representation company ware. But he finds as a special, he furthers his relation with Maria Louise by sending her as a small present. So apparently this is a informal channel through which high elite people can get their hands on porcelain. Another source is a very complicated system that consists of bankers. These bankers can provide the rich and famous with money if you need to pay your soldiers, and you need large amounts of money for war or something. You can get that from them at very short notice, but also you can buy their uniforms or the interior of your palace, or all sorts of luxury items. And there is a select group of Dutch merchants, bankers that are catering to the elite, and they are expected by their customers, their clients, to deliver luxury items and to have good taste. They are agents, and they're mostly active in diplomacy because they have to have an international network to get their hands on money quickly. And one of them is Jan van Beuningen, who is a very rich man in Amsterdam. He's an art dealer, he's a connoisseur, he's a collector himself, he's a diplomat, and in his inventory in Amsterdam we do find Kakiemon pieces. And he arranges the auction of William III painting collection when he dies. So he is a man with high-ranking contacts, and those were given to him because of his access to the German court of Charles VI, where he was entitled, and so he had access to high levels. And Jan van Beuningen delivers all sorts of things to Maria Louise, also gloves and horses, and he also takes care of a shipment of porcelain. The frames, these are probably frames of paintings, shall follow over Deventer, place in the east of the country, by water. I have ordered the porcelain to be packed in 6 large jars, those jars and chests, and these chests to Friesland. So, Anne Gertsen, here you are, this is the other end, and how things are packed. You pack them, and then you stack them in large pots, and then you crate them up again. Very similar to China, actually. So, in other words, Jan van Beuningen takes care of things for Maria Louise. He orders things, he arranges them for her to be delivered on her doorstep in Friesland. More information is in the general account books of receipts and expenses of Maria Louise, and we can see in various dealers that deliver Kaatje Luidsmaturp, and she delivers tea and porcelain. There's Vlaaske Buma, there's a lady Marsum. Marsum is a place in Groningen, so she's probably a local dealer, and she also delivers tea wares and porcelain for her yacht. So this is porcelain for use, probably, and you can see that the top entry is quite a lot of money, 300 guilders. A skilled worker makes 400 a year, so this is quite a considerable amount of money. But tea, and possibly tea and porcelain for use, are cheaper. You can see that. And the last entry is from a man called Brandt in Holthuis, and Holthuis is near Deventer in the east of the country, and other sources say that he is an East India man, so he is also probably who you can order quite cheap porcelain. And we have to have a huge disclaimer here, because porcelain in this context can also, of course, mean Chinese and Japanese, but even Delft porcelain. So we can't be exactly sure of the nature of the porcelain that is mentioned. But it gives an idea of the network and the agents that are active. An important dealer in the network is Abraham Tiens, and he is from Amsterdam, and we know that he is a porcelain dealer. He appears in other sources, and he takes care of larger amounts, of larger sums of porcelain. For tea, he also delivers tea. You see, the combination tea of porcelain is very strong, and you see that he delivers for 594 guilders, 18, and through the same, and those are the bankers Reus, paid to Adriaan Tiens for tea delivered to Her Highness. So here we start to see how the network works. You have agents like Tiens who invest their own money in buying porcelain, and they get reimbursed by the banker of the client. So they have a kind of account, and every now and then the banker reimburses them when he is being reimbursed by, in this case, Maria Louise. So there's a whole chain, and for more international clients, there could be up to 3 links in the chain. The local agent declares with the banker in Amsterdam, and the banker in Amsterdam has to wait until the home banker in Germany reimburses him again. So there are various steps, and there are various letters by these agents saying that they're short of cash. Please give me my money. So again, the agents of luxury items, bankers that take care, and the bankers Reus that are mentioned here are known bankers from Amsterdam, Diederik and Gerhard Reus. And for Maria Louise, they take care of all sorts of deliveries. Again, they cater for the rich and famous. So you can order through the bankers Reus Japanese cabinets, or gilt leather, or Parmesan cheese, and wine from the Rhine and Mosel region. We're slowly working up to the reception. And lastly, you can, it's very sweet, the bankers Reus also pay for someone to cure the parrot of the daughter of Maria Louise. It's very sweet. When Johan Willem Frieso dies in 1711, there's a stock being made of all their possessions and their debts and all their accounts. And for Johan Willem Frieso, it states that he still owes Tiens for porcelain and tea, 1,994 guilders. That's quite a lot of money. And even Maria Louise even owes him more, 2,366. So he's a serious dealer, and we know that he is a serious dealer. He is actually from a family of dealers, because his daughter Aletta Tiens takes over, and she appears in the books of someone else who collects porcelain, Johan Hendrik van Bassenaar-Opdam. He belongs to the Dutch high-ranking elite, and he has a fancy townhouse near the court in The Hague, and he also collects vast amounts of porcelain. And we know that he buys Kakiemon porcelain from Aletta Tiens, because he did what every collector should do, is keep your receipts, ladies and gentlemen. So we have his receipts, wonderful, for 1734, and it states 11 dishes of extra old Japanese colored porcelain. This must be Kakiemon. We know that from other sources. So, but by that time, to answer an earlier question, Kakiemon porcelain is qualified as old, meaning you can't get it anymore. There's also another dealer that is mentioned in the invoices, and that is Paulus de Rude. He's also a dealer from Amsterdam, also comes from, his father was also a porcelain dealer, Steven, we know that. We also know where they live in Amsterdam. They have a porcelain shop near the Dam Square, and he also delivers Kakiemon to, not these exact pieces that I'm showing you here, but to indicate the type that he is selling to Johan Hendrik van Wassenaar Obdam. Two colored hexagonal pots, two old colored square bottles, and these bottles can be the bottles, the small bottles with a neck, or the Geneva bottle is a glass shape that is made into porcelain. And three old colored pots with peacocks. And of course we know all these shapes and decorations from the porcelain collection here in Dresden. And we see from the receipts that Paulus de Rude, buys these things at auction. So we see here the second generation, the first generation of collectors who collected when Kakiemon was still made in the late 17th century, come on the market in the early 18th century, and there are various dealers or agents from Paris, from Germany, who come and buy these things at auctions, maybe through Dutch agents, and de Rude buys these at various auctions. He names the names of the auctioneers. So, all in all, we get a glimpse into the system of clients and dealers and agents, and they act as intermediaries in the supply of luxury items for the elite. And I'm very pleased that we'll be here more tomorrow about this in the case of Augustus the Strong. Thank you very much.